This is the Merdeka Award Roundtable, and we are talking about non-profits. Earlier, we talked about coordination, and I get a consensus here that you guys agree generally there's a lack of coordination when it comes to pulling all the organizations together and having one strong way of doing things. Perhaps you guys can share your experience in terms of what should be done then.
Well, we've got some funding from Yayasan Kebajikan Negara to assist with the food for the homeless. And we've also got many other NGOs feeding the homeless, especially in KL. We've got so many homeless in town. But what's lacking is these homeless people, they've got food and they've got clothes given to them. But what they need is a place to stay. What we need is for these donors to probably pool their funds and probably rent a place for them, and they can probably stay for a night or two for however long they need, and that would really serve their needs rather than just keep giving food and clothes and food and clothes. You just need to have better coordination between the NGOs. Yes, there needs to be someone in charge and to coordinate what's needed and how many homeless that we have.
You know, you said there needs to be someone in charge, and the problem is no one wants to allow someone to be in charge. But in the NGO world, it's the other way. Now, it's simple. The reason goes back, one, funding. They're all competing for the same pool of funds. So they're like, if we're going to share, how do we split the funds? This becomes a challenge. Two, they have different way of operating, right? And three, there's just really no interest because, sadly, a lot of older people and senior people who go into NGOs, it's become a sense of a status. Right? So I am now the whatever, chairman, treasurer, whatever, and I am not going to let people tell me what to do or how to run this foundation because I have maybe 2 to 3 years, whatever is my presidency term.
Territorial.
Right, exactly. And I've seen that time and time again, and I go to these people, I'm like, in the corporate world, you communicate, you cooperate, you synergize because you know you need to come together to make more money. How come, when it comes to the NGO world, you do the very opposite? You know?
Okay. And how do you how can all these organizations complement each other, serving the same mission? I mean, do you have ideas on how to go about that?
I think one would be, ROS could finally set up a committee and say, listen, we're going to try to coordinate this and bring experts on board, independent experts, so it doesn't have to be necessarily from any specific organization. You could just be experts coming together. It could just be finally NGOs going saying, listen, we're in the 21st century. It's about time we sat down. And so in NGO Hub, perfect idea. We did this where we brought all the different homeless organizations together, and we had a discussion. You know, we brought them together. Well, let's discuss this, because it's not just about giving them houses. Sometimes you have 3 to 5 groups going to the same location, feeding the same homeless person, right? And it's just simple things like that, and it's just pushing that conversation. And I think that's where young people now have that ability or the opportunity to come forward and say, hey, we can do something about this. We can contribute. And we're not just going to sit down and play our video games and chill out at home or just go to work and come back. We're going to actively participate and contribute. And I think this is something that is very, very important.
Yeah. So when we talk about coordination, this is something that all organizations in the world are trying to do so that they can provide more effective and efficient services to the community that they target. But coordination is something which is very challenging. The reasons is because we can see that if we try to go too much on coordination and make it a law, then it gives very little room for the NGOs to operate. That's what we do not want. On the other hand, if we leave it loose, everybody operates on their own, we have problems. I'll give you an example of an agency which provide NPO support to countries. Yeah? Even within the same umbrella, United Nations, for example, we have many organizations. They are not well coordinated. One organization within the United Nations are doing X thing, the other organization may be doing different thing, but different approach. And sometimes this does not meet in terms of the community. And who are the recipient of that? The community. The community get confused.
Okay.
So if we coordinate too much and become, we give an entity to actually to regulate all this, then it creates other problem. One good example is a country where they have created an entity to coordinate all the NGOs. And all the funding have to be approved by this entity. And they actually charge for an overhead, which is too high. With something that I think we should not go for it, because money is very scarce and we do not want it just to be used as an overhead which actually doesn't been able to be translated into activities.
And bringing this back closer to home, when it comes to coordination, where is the stumbling block for locally run NPO, nonprofits?
In my opinion, for locally run NPOs, especially if you're doing a single cause, like if you're doing education, or for us, we're doing health, we're doing cancer, is that there needs to be strategic direction in what we want to do and the services we provide. And strategic direction needs to come from government. For us to know that what we're doing is actually going to have a far-reaching, wider impact on society, there needs to be a template, a form in place so that we know that, okay, if we're doing this, this is going to assist, say, in cancer survivorship. That us talking to, by us having a cancer information system where we have a helpline for patients, they can better access government services. But having said that, we need to know what those government services are. We need to have the visibility of what the government is doing within their framework and how do we complement that. We're not working against government. I think a lot of people think that NGOs are there to work against government. We're not. We're here to complement government in that sense. And it's also within governments themselves. There has to be understanding that for us in cancer, it's always put into the block of a health issue. It's not a health issue. It's a societal issue because there are far-reaching implications in terms of cancer to society, to economics, to the general public. So it's just not health having to look after it, but it's the other industry, transport, it's finance. All these things have to come together and work concertedly so that there is direction and there is impact in everything we do.
If I may add on education, you've got all these refugees in informal education schools in Malaysia who are there to provide education. And so questions arise, do we do a local syllabus? Do we do foreign? Who sort of puts the curriculum together? Do we do and if we do a Malaysian curriculum, is it online? Should we make it online? Can it be certified? Because certification is a big issue for refugees. So you have all these questions. And so what happens is, like you say, if there is no larger framework that we're working in, if there isn't an overall goal, let's say, for example, all children must go to school and get an education, regardless of creed, religion, race, and whatnot, then what happens is, and smaller NGOs like us, we just then say, you know what, we're going to do our own thing. This is our master plan. This is what we think is the best way to get from A to B, and we come up with our own strategy. And so if everyone is doing that, imagine we're all reinventing the wheel, and it's tiring. Many fail in the process. There's collateral damage in the process. So it's very difficult. And if I can talk about coordination in terms of, with problems, we need to all, I think it's communication. A husband and wife will probably fail if they can't communicate, And so we need the stakeholders to sit down at the table. We need to be able to say, I'm from this NGO, and you're from the government, and you're from the private sector. Let's sit here and discuss and be open to talk. And in every sector, even development, we have so many development projects happening right now. And do we have the development companies sitting with the government, sitting with environmental agencies and looking at the loss, doing an analysis of the situation? If we don't have that, how are we going to move forward in any sector?
But I always say this, having a business approach is fantastic, but you also cannot remove the need for empathy and the need for humanitarian, because there are certain sectors that there is no way to make it sustainable financially through income generation. Right? And that's why you have governments whose responsibility is to provide for their citizens in those sectors. Now, here's what I believe. So you've got young people now, you're pushing everyone, okay, go do social enterprise. And if you look at the results, most of them are technopreneurs. Mm-hmm. They set up an app, they set up this, they set up that, great. But where are the social services? Mm-hmm. So if you want young people to get involved, which I think young people should get involved because it's our planet too, right? We're the ones who are going to be here for the next 20, 30, 50 years. We need to start being actively engaged. And I think this is another challenge where we need to coordinate young people to understand the needs of the social sector and not just say, okay, go do a business or go to university and that's it. And I think this is tremendously lacking. A, I think it's the government's responsibility to do that. B, I also think it's the corporate's responsibility to do that. And C, I think it's the NGO world and the leaders, the decision makers who also need to do that. So we have to have this tripartite approach to come together, or tri-sector approach, to come together and address the coordination and not just say, okay, you leaders or you leaders or you leaders, because it won't work that way.
Okay. I have to take this discussion to the last commercial break, but when we come back, let's talk about the way forward. You talked about engaging the public, engaging the young, and we still have that coordination problem within the many NGOs that we have in this country, as well as how do you best complement the government's role in carrying out those works that you are doing. And that we will discuss in our final segment of the Merdeka Award Roundtable. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and you are watching our final segment of the Merdeka Award Roundtable. We're talking about non-profits, and we talked about some of the challenges. So what's the way forward? How do you envision the role of non-profits in Malaysia, and what are some of the potential that you see that we are missing out because of lack of coordination or policy making? Can I start with Tuan Haji?
Apart from the need to sit together and discuss and talk to each other and coordinate, we also need to share our data, the information that we have. We need to analyze this data, have research done on this data so that we make decisions, informed decisions. We want to make the right decisions. We do not just want to argue and against each other and debate, but we want to make decisions based on facts, because that's important, because we need to know what we are facing with and how best to deal with the challenges that we have.
No, I agree. I think in terms of coordination, it shouldn't be just in coordination within the NGO world itself, but coordination with cross-sectional organizations. So for cancer, we need to talk more with academia. We need to talk more with the researchers. We need to be able to implement current research and evidence, because what is viable for 10 years ago might not be true for today. So there needs to be a lot more coordination and collaboration between the different entities. So it has to be very much more cross-sectional and not just in our own little silos that, okay, we do this work, so we only talk to people who do this work. It has to be a greater reach, a greater audience.
It's an interesting point what you brought about the research, because a lot of these critical intellectual discussions are done at the university level as well as data. And do you feel that there is a lack of communication on that part? Academics, NPOs, are there better ways to engage each other?
Interesting, Taji, you bring about the issues related to data sharing. Yeah. This is something that we are struggling with, especially when we have so many silos coming up within the government structure. It's very difficult for data sharing between the NGOs. It's almost difficult. But within the government entity itself that deal with the NGO, there are also issues on this. So I think the way forward is that we must, as we move towards a developed nation, we hope that everybody will measure up in that sense. We must actually not only coordinate, but facilitate the NGOs to work and support the government. Remember, we need NGOs because they have the resources, they have the time resources, they also have the financial resources, and also we have a lot of good people who have good technical capacity who are actually sometimes actually supporting or working outside the country because they found it they cannot contribute within a very strict system and the silos situation in our country. So this is something that we need to think about, and there must be a stronger mechanism that put in place to be more mature in handling all these issues, and we must make sure that we facilitate rather than putting a block to any of the NGOs who want to come in.
And also a quick mention that NPOs also have the better access and understanding on the real situation on the ground. I mean, yes, both of you have been doing amazing work with education and also helping the underserved communities. And for you personally, when you want to take this to the next level, what would be the key thing that's missing and you'd like to achieve?
For me, I would really like to get a lot of a lot more young people involved. I think that this is something that is severely lacking in Malaysia. And a lot of young people have become impartial, have become, not inspired to even look at the social issues that are happening, and it is increasing. I always say this, from an NGO hub perspective, the NGOs are like the maids of this country, right? They take care of the sick, they take care of the animals, they take care of the environment, they take care of the health. And really, many of us, or the public in general, we don't really take good care of these people, of the NGOs and the leaders of the NGOs, right? We either love them, support them, or we judge them. We almost never actually actively engage with them, assist them, and support them throughout that. So I would like young people to get involved, graduates, even right from high school, right? In international schools, they always get their young kids involved in social projects, not even businesses. Nowadays, it's always go to a social project, go to a country, go realize the needs, understand what the planet needs in every sector. 2, I think it's important for NGOs to start finding methods and systems to engage the public. So not just, I think the one thing that I look at a model I think is fantastic is feeding the homeless. They've somehow managed to really, in the past 2 years, and I guess thanks to the minister, captivate people into this topic. But I think there are so many more sectors that we need to get people involved and passionate about to contribute.
Here's the thing, there are sectors or needs in society that may seem sexier in that sense, for corporates and for people at large. So there is a disparity in sense of what kind of mission people have more attention